Dr. Chomsky, thank you for joining us. Would you, or do you consider yourself a person of faith?
I try not to have faith. I believe in a principle that was enunciated rather well by Bertrand Russell, which is that you should try to keep away from having irrational beliefs. You should believe some things that for which you can find some evidence or some support, apart from commitment to principles like equality and freedom and justice and so on. Those, I wouldn't say that's faith. Those are things you're committed to. But as far as beliefs about the world, reality, my feeling is one should try to, as much as possible, have substantiated beliefs, or at least beliefs for which evidence could be appropriate.
Well then, would you consider yourself, paradoxically, a person who has faith in the scientific method?
I think it's the only method we have to try to get some approximate understanding of the world. I don't have faith that it'll reach the truth, or even that it's leading us in the true direction. In fact, as someone committed to the scientific method, I'm also committed to its consequences, and among them are that you and I and the rest of the species are organic creatures who have our specific capacities and limitations, and we simply don't know and have no reason to believe that these capacities are such that we can gain the truth about the world. We do our best, but that's the most we can do.
But there people would say that you cannot have moral principles unless you adhere to a faith.
If I attribute those principles to a divine creature who I define as ordering me to have those principles, the principles don't become any more better established. So that's a useless step. It's true that our moral principles are not firmly grounded in unshakable evidence and argument, but nothing is going to make them any more firmly grounded. As for having a meaningful life, that seems to me irrelevant. No people who have meaningful lives with faith and without faith.
Now, could Americanism be fairly characterized as a religion?
I would call Americanism or Italianism or Russianism or anything else totalitarian doctrines. No one should have any. In fact, these notions like that are only used in totalitarian states. So, for example, in the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union, dissidents, Sakharov and people like that, were condemned as being anti-Soviet. Under the neo-Nazi generals in Brazil, people who condemned their horrifying policies were criticized as anti-Brazilian. On the other hand, if a book called The Un-Italians appeared in Italy, referring to people who criticized Italian foreign policy, let's say, people would just laugh and ridicule. Maybe under Mussolini it would have been different. And the reason is that these are totalitarian doctrines. They identify state policy with the country and its society and its culture. And that's not done by people who have any conception of freedom. Actually, there's a long history to this notion. It goes back to the Bible. In Kings 1, King Ahab condemns Elijah, who was seeking justice and freedom. He condemns him as being, the Hebrew phrase, Ocher Yisrael, that means roughly someone who hates Israel or troubles Israel, something like that. He's anti-Israel because he's seeking justice and freedom. And that's the origin of the concept, and it has an inglorious history from King Ahab right through the Soviet Union and up to today, and we should avoid it, at least if we want to identify ourselves with the ideals of Elijah and not King Ahab. If your concept of America is that it should be a violent, destructive, racist state that seeks to achieve the ends of those in power by any murderous or other means that it has, and that is quite happy to have, say, 30 million people hungry and 40 million without health insurance and so on. If that's your concept of America, then yes, you should call Martin Luther King un-American. You should call the people who won the struggle for freedom and human rights and labor rights and women's rights, you should call all of them un-American. On the other hand, and I would call people who regard America that way as people who hate America. That's their conception of America. They're free to have it, but it's not one that I'd want. If by America you mean the people who have the actions and the people who have in fact won a quite remarkable degree of freedom over the centuries, in fact beyond any other country that I know, not by a gift, but by constant hard struggle and dedication, and have achieved at least some measure of justice and want more, and who are opposed to aggression and violence. If that's your conception of America, fine, then I'm pro-American. But there's no answer. It depends which America you mean. It's like King Ahab again. If your concept of Israel is King Ahab's concept, then Elijah is anti-Israeli. If your conception of Israel is Elijah's concept, then Ahab hates Israel. But there's no answer. You take your choices.
How important are George W. Bush's religious beliefs as they relate to U.S. foreign policy?
The fact is that every American president since Jimmy Carter, who I think was authentic, everyone since then has been compelled, or maybe some of them do it